The number one strongest predictor of well-being is your relationship satisfaction. Number one, not your job, not your friends, not your physical fitness. The number one indicator of how happy you are in your life satisfaction, is your relationship satisfaction.
Have you ever wondered why you're attracted to the people you're attracted to? Do you wish that you knew exactly what to look for that will ensure a healthy long-term relationship? Or have you ever felt unsure in your relationship even though they check all the boxes? I got all the answers for you. This episode is getting into the psychology behind choosing your life partner, and we're getting into the nitty-gritty of chemistry, long-term relationships, and compatibility. Today, we're talking with Dr. Molly Burritz, a couples therapist and relationship psychology expert who is here to help us decode exactly what's happening underneath those dynamics. By the end of this conversation, you will learn the subconscious psychology behind attraction, why so many women confuse anxiety with passion, how to know if you're in a healing relationship or just replaying old patterns, what emotional safety actually looks like and how to create it, and the most important conversation that every couple should have ASAP. If you've ever felt confused about love, unsure whether to trust your gut, or wondered if you're asking for too much in a partner, this episode will transform how you see relationships. Let's get into it. Welcome, Dr. Molly, to the Everygirl podcast. You have a really unique perspective on love and long-term commitment that we're going to get into all of that. But I'm curious first to understand how you got this perspective that you have. Was there something in your life that changed the way that you view relationships?
I'm considered a relationship expert. I'm a specialist in couples therapy. And people tend to think that because of that, that my relationships have always been perfect. And I would say that the exact opposite is true. That the reason that I came to this specialty and had this really pronounced interest in relationships is because generally I've really struggled with them in my life, especially early in life. I always had a really keen interest in my parents' relationship when I was a kid. And I would ask them questions that I think are not typical of how most children would interface with their parents around their parents' marriage. I would sort of ask them deep and intense and intimate questions about how they met, how they knew they were in love, how they knew they were the one. So I kind of always had this interest. But I think throughout my teens and my 20s, my relationships were pretty volatile. I think I had an anxious attachment style. I was always trying to find like security and a strong foundation in a relationship and often ended up brokenhearted. So I think because of sort of a series of broken hearts in my life, broken relationships for different reasons, I got really interested in relationships and started studying them from an academic perspective and tried to sort of heal myself first in that way by getting all the information that I could. And then once I did that, I was sort of able to feel secure enough to branch out and start cultivating more healthy relationships in my own life in my 30s.
I think that the best teachers are obviously the ones who have been through what they're helping their students with, because you understand what it's like that so many of your patients and clients and listeners of this podcast are going through. Like, you have been there. You know also how to get out of it because you've gotten out of it yourself. So I think those are the most effective people that are sharing their messages and helping people heal, are the people that have healed themselves. But what was the healing process like for you to be able to have healthy relationships and attract those instead of the opposite that you'd been in?
You know, I think a lot of people go into the healing process thinking that they have to do it all on their own. And I believe that there is value in that. But I would say that the most meaningful and profound healing in my relationship space happened in the context of a loving relationship. So when I met the person who is my now husband, I was with him for almost 8 years before I married him. And during that time, there were a series of tests, I think, that I put him through and hardships that we faced that I really required him to show how committed he was to me, how steady, how loyal, and just how sort of honest and straightforward he would be with me in getting through the hard stuff. And I really think it was the process of being in that relationship, of sticking with someone who was committed to me through the ins and outs that really forced me to look at the things I was doing myself to sabotage the relationship, including calling off our wedding, which I did do. I called off a wedding to
Stop.
the man that
Oh
I am now married to, and tomorrow is our 10-year wedding anniversary.
my God. Well,
So,
congratulations. First of all,
thank
that's
you.
a huge deal. But 10 years. What
Yeah.
made you want to call it off initially? Did you have some of those like old ingrained fears coming up?
100%. So I dated the same guy with a different name all the way from the time I was about 16 years old to the time I was 30. And I had 3 or 4 meaningful relationships in that time that were all kind of marked by, for one reason or another, my partner, I'm heterosexual, so the man not really being available, not being emotionally available to me, not wanting a commitment, something that they didn't want from the relationship that I knew was integral to me and that I needed in order to feel safe. And then once I got together with the person I'm now married to, I kind of through the relationship felt like not as excited or felt like there was missing an element of passion that I had in previous relationships. And I really had to learn only through experience that I was really confusing anxiety for passion. I really realize now that the chase of being in a relationship with someone who I was trying to get to choose me, I was interpreting that as excitement, as passion, and I was really misinterpreting it because when I found someone, my now husband, who was really committed, really steadfast, really loyal, I initially, that was so unfamiliar to me that I started to feel like something was missing and something was wrong. And I really kind of sabotaged it. And I started thinking something was off. I was really testing him in so many ways, really to the point where I called off my wedding after invitations had already gone out.
Wow. Wow. But it's so cool to see you realize and heal from that and obviously then end up with this person because I think that is so relatable. I know so many women listening are probably like, oh my God, either, yes, I know I have this issue, I'm attracted to bad boys or whatever it is, and I'm trying to work through it, or some people that are like, oh my God, is that my problem that I may not be aware of? I'm sure you work with so many people that have such similar ideas of being like, oh, I think that this is boring or something's missing, but in reality, it just isn't toxic. How do you know the difference between, there actually is something missing, this actually isn't your person, versus you are just in a toxic cycle that you need to heal from, and this actually is the right person for you?
So many of the things in my life I say I found out the hard way. I didn't read a book and say, oh, that pattern is toxic. I had to find out through experiencing it. So when I called off our engagement and broke up with him, I then experienced the real longing and emptiness and sadness and depression that came from not having my best friend in my life, like the most steady, loyal, committed person that I felt the most safe with in the world. And even in the period of time that we were broken up, he never faltered. He kind of saw this in me and he knew he was able to like cut through the weeds and see what was going on. He never gave up on me. He never stopped trying to help me see or not really convince me because he wasn't trying to convince me, but he stayed steady and he stayed with me through it all. And even though we were technically broken up, he still made it very, very clear to me what he wanted. And what he wanted was to marry me, and I think that seeing his steadiness and realizing, oh my God, this is the thing that I have said that I have wanted my entire life is for someone to choose me and choose me over and over again without exception. And here I have it right in front of me. And how much I missed him and how much I realized that I really didn't want to live without him made me confront this toxic habit of mine and sort of look it in the face and say, this is the thing that you've said you wanted your whole life. It's right here in front of you. Why aren't you reaching out and grabbing it? And I think I had gotten like really hung up on one of the most common myths that I hear. And I think this expression is so dangerous. And the expression is when you know, you know.
Yes. Oh my God, talk about this, please.
I just think it's not true. My experience in my life, there were relationships where I knew that I knew. I just knew that this was the one, and I just knew that this was the guy that I was going to marry. And guess what? It wasn't. And it's now clear to me in hindsight that absolutely that was not the right one, but I didn't know it then. And then when I was together with my husband, who is the love of my life, who I've now been with for 18 years, I was riddled by sort of ambivalence and having to confront all my demons and all of my unhealthy patterns. And it wasn't just a straightforward when you know, you know. And so in both directions, I've experienced it having gone wrong. When I thought I knew and it absolutely wasn't, and when I didn't know, and it absolutely marrying him has been the best decision of my life.
Do you see that show up in a lot of clients and patients of people being like, well, I feel like I should know, but I don't know for sure?
Absolutely, I see it all the time. I work with a lot of women, and I see a lot of women saying, like, if they have any doubts, if they have any ambivalence, there's a lot of messaging around, like, well, if it were aligned, if it were the right thing, you wouldn't have any doubts. And maybe for some people that's true. And I believe that it is because I've heard stories like that, that when people know, they know. But I think when you're dealing with long term insecurities in relationships, long term unhealthy patterns or dynamics, it becomes harder to trust that inner voice because there is some patterning that is unreliable. Some habits and some ways you've always done things that you have told yourself, this is the way, this is what I do, except they're unreliable habits because they're not getting you the outcome that you want. And so there's some reprogramming that has to happen there. And I think it can be really difficult when you're in that messy middle to know, okay, is this my intuition telling me something is wrong here and I need to double check this? Or am I calling upon a sort of flawed pattern or way of doing things, and I need to challenge that way in order to really assess what's going on here? It's tough to know.
Yeah, it's tough. Is it your intuition or is it anxiety? What advice would you give for people who don't know if it's anxiety or intuition?
So there are a couple of benchmarks. I ask people to think about anxiety as being fast and intuition as being slow. So I would say if you're spiraling, if your thoughts are racing, if your palms are sweating, your heart is racing, if it's feeling really fast, that's probably anxiety. To me, intuition is a much slower pace. It's a much deeper sort of knowing. It's a quieter voice that is, and this is the second part, that is always kind of with you. It's more consistent. Anxiety is fast and it also comes and goes. So sometimes, if it's anxiety, you're not going to be experiencing it all. And when you are experiencing it, it's going to be really fast and chaotic. But with intuition, it's a very slow, deep experience. And I think it's always kind of there. Now, whether you're paying attention to it or not may change, but when you dial into it, it's always present. It's an inner knowing. So I ask people to think about the two things. Is it fast or is it slow? And is it inconsistent or is it consistent?
That is a really helpful way to differentiate, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, I've dealt with relationship anxiety and have worked through it with my therapist, and it definitely you feel the difference of, like, the fast versus the slow. I think also it's, like, at certain times. If it's intuition, like you said, it's there all the time, it's kind of hard to ignore, whereas anxiety, at least for me, feels like, "Oh, if I start having this thought about, like, well, does this mean we're gonna be unhappy in the future?" And it starts to be like, "Well, what if?" is how anxiety feels, while intuition is like, "I know this is what's happening," if that makes sense. It's like the worry versus the knowing.
Yes. What I'm hearing you say is it's almost like, is it future focused or is it present?
Yes,
Right?
exactly,
Anxiety
yes.
feels about the future, intuition feels about the now.
Exactly, it's so, so true. I have so many other relationship questions I wanna dive in with you, but first, I'm really curious, If you could walk us through the actual psychology behind attraction and partner choice, like what are all of the subconscious factors at play that make us be attracted to the people we're attracted to?
It's such an important question, and I have a partial answer for you. There is so much that we don't understand. Okay. And this is what's so hard. Like, I think there's a lot of emerging research on pheromones, which are like a type of chemical that humans transmit that we know very little about. And the research is sort of suggesting that who we're attracted to for mate selection has to do with pheromones and how people smell. And if you think about it, like this has to be true because we are animals. And this is true for animals, all mammals in the world, that they're not just attracted to one another based on appearance. There are other biological factors beyond our control going on that influence who we're attracted to. So I'll start by saying there's a lot we don't know. But I'll also say, I think there are a lot of things that we do know, that we often tend to be attracted to people who remind us of someone very familiar to us. And usually that is a primary caretaker. So, most traditionally, that can look like a mother or a father. And oftentimes, when we're in relationship with someone, we pick someone subconsciously. We're not doing this intentionally, we're not doing this on purpose, but we pick someone who has traits that require us to sort of come face to face with early experiences that we had. So we're either choosing someone who's very much like our primary caregiver, or we think we're choosing someone who's opposite of our primary caregiver. And either way, it tends to circle around that through our partner and through our primary relationship, we end up having to interface with the same difficult dynamic that we experienced as a very young child with one or both parents. And so, what I can tell you is that I absolutely know that this was true for me when I was picking men that were, for some reason, either not available to me or not committed to me or couldn't show up for me in the way that I wanted. I had amazing, wonderful parents who worked so hard for me and my brother and my sisters to give us a life that was better than the one that they had. But they had really hard lives. And my parents worked a lot. And there were four kids, and we had very few resources. And we were all born sort of back to back to back. So, at one time, my parents had four kids under the age of 5.
Wow.
So I
Ugh.
like literally cannot even imagine when you don't have money, when you don't have resources, when you're trying so hard to give a good life to your kids, but you just don't have enough to go around. I think that I had a feeling a lot of times of being lonely, of being sort of unseen, not having the kind of access to my parents that I really wanted, despite all of their best efforts and despite how hard they were working to give me a beautiful life, which they did. This is not about blaming parents. This is about really seeing our parents as having done the best that they absolutely could, and yet some needs were not met. And so I found myself choosing partners that were somehow out of reach to me in some way. My high school boyfriend, who I was madly in love with, his parents never said, I love you. And so he never learned to say, I love you. And he couldn't say it back to me. Even though I knew that he
Wow.
loved me, when I would tell him, I love you, he would just clam up and he couldn't say it back. And so there was a way in which like I couldn't fully access him and I couldn't like truly feel loved because that's such a vulnerable thing to tell someone that you love them. And imagine like loving someone deeply and literally never hearing them say it back to you. It was so hard on my little heart, my little 16-year-old heart. And I have such empathy for him. What must that have been like to really love me and to not be able to conjure the words to say it and to keep all that inside and have whatever shame or embarrassment or guilt he had around that, I don't know. But again, it's not coming from him being a bad person. It's about realizing like, oh, this was a pattern that I had, that I would fall in love with people who in some way were not accessible to me. the way I really needed them to be. And so
Mm.
when I finally did with my husband, when he was still accessible to me, even after I called off our wedding and broke his heart, like that was like, wow, this is a really different experience. I don't know anything about this. I'm like, I've got a PhD in clinical psychology. And the way that I'm learning about love is like, this man is teaching me through his actions. And that's why I mean, like, you can do all the healing that you want on your own. You can journal and you can sweat it out and you can cry it out. And I am for all of those things. But I really believe that some of the deepest healing occurs in connection to another person, a person who is safe, and that a person who is safe has the ability to really create healing.
And especially because it is so subconscious, like, I also know so many people who consciously are like, "I do not want these toxic patterns to be repeated. I don't want someone like my father or my mother or whatever it is, like, I don't want that." And then because of the subconscious, that's the one who's picking. So, like, then they'll may
Yeah.
not want that pattern, but that pattern will be repeated. So, then to your point, is it an effort to realize what your own patterns are and then seek out partnership that directly is opposite of that or is so different, even if it does feel uncomfortable, even if you do feel like, is something missing? Am I settling? And just allowing yourself to, like, how do you heal within that dynamic once you
Yeah.
are aware of this?
Yeah. Well, once you're aware, okay, I choose people who are not accessible to me in a really meaningful way. And maybe on the surface, they look like they're going to be, but then there's some way in which they foundationally, fundamentally cannot meet my needs. Once you see that happening, or early in the dating relationship experience, you need to have the courage to confront that in your relationship. Of course, I didn't have this skill when I was 16 years old. But if that had happened to me now, if I were dating a man now who couldn't say I love you back, instead of just kind of turning into myself and feeling bad about myself and feeling sad, I would say, what's going on here? I'm confused. All of the signals that you're sending me lead me to believe that you love me. And yet the words seem very difficult for you to say. This is important to me. Words of affirmation and love are a value for me and something that I need to feel secure and safe in a relationship. What is happening here? So it's not about just like breaking up with anyone who, at the very littlest sign of a red flag, turning and running. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about turning and facing it and knowing, standing up for yourself and saying, like, this is something I need, and find out whether you can get it met in this relationship. And if after you've explored this with the person that you're dating, if it can't get met, if this is an obstacle you can't overcome, that's when you say, you know what? Thinking about spending the rest of my life not hearing the words I love you is just not, that's not enough for me. That's not aligned for me. And I have to choose differently. So sometimes it results in you having an informed, difficult, and productive conversation that can be very transformative. But sometimes it means you have to turn the page and start a new chapter.
It's also really hard thing, I think, for people to realize, well, which one is it? Is it
Yeah.
confronting that and sticking with it because this is a toxic dynamic? Or again, kind of going back to like the anxiety versus intuition. It's so hard to know how to get out of the dynamic. I know that you were saying like a big part for you after you called off the wedding, it was like, I miss my best friend so much. A lot of people that are leaving toxic relationships think, oh, I miss him so much. So that must mean that, we're meant to be. And so, because of all the messaging that we have as a culture, it is really confusing to know what is right for me versus what's a toxic situation that I shouldn't stay in. What advice would you give for people that, again, are not really sure? Is this something that I should stick with and confront and stay with? And what is worth walking away? Because that means this isn't the right relationship for me.
Okay, this is a great question. And I want to give a sort of really hands on, solution focused answer. Here's an example of a conversation where I know the answer is you have to walk away. If I had said that to my boyfriend who had trouble saying, I love you, and he responded with, what are you talking about? It's just words. You know how I feel about you. Okay. That tells me you do not have the emotional maturity to really confront this and to really see what I need, right? Or if he responds by saying, "You're getting so caught up on three little words. Look at all these things I do for you. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Isn't it obvious how I feel about you?" Also, not acceptable, because what I'm telling you is that those words actually do matter to me. So even if you have found a way to devalue them, they're not important to you for whatever reason. I'm telling you they're important to me, and I'm asking you to consider, why is this difficult for you? If you can't do that, that shows me, okay, I can't be met in this space. This isn't going to work for me. But another example of a way to interface with this, which is someone who doesn't have all the answers and isn't perfect, but if he comes to the table and says, "I'm glad you brought this up. It's really hard to talk about, but I know it's been sort of awkward and uncomfortable between us. And I appreciate the fact that you brought it up, because it's really, you're right, it is really hard for me to talk about. I don't really understand it, but what I can tell you is that, my mom and dad didn't really say I love you in my house. Maybe it's just because I don't practice, but the words make me feel weird. And like, I do feel that way about you, but I feel really weird about saying it. And I'd like to figure out how to work with this, because I don't want to lose you. And if this is important to you, I want to be able to meet your needs." That's a completely different conversation. That is someone who doesn't have all the answers, who's not a perfect person, but who can meet you in the space and is willing to vulnerably look at a problem and take accountability. Somebody who wants to meet your needs, and maybe they haven't gotten it perfect just yet, but they're willing to take a look at it and have a hard conversation to try to do it. Very, very different than someone who shows up defensively and minimizes you for wanting the things that you want.
So it's not always about what they do wrong or the fact that they've done something wrong. It's like how they respond when they do, when they have hurt you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if my husband broke up with me or divorced me because of my flaws, we would have been done a long time ago. You know, everybody has flaws. There are ways in which I know I don't meet his needs, but I want to, and I keep working on it. And I want to take accountability for the ways that I don't, and keep trying to be the best version of myself, both for myself as well as him.
What are some signs that you're in a partnership that is healing your old wounds rather than just replaying them?
I think that if you want to really pay attention to your general sense of well-being all across your life, across all domains of your life. Because if you're in a toxic relationship that is just requiring that you repeat old patterns and old dysfunctional habits, that negative energy space is going to impact how you show up in other places in your life. You're going to find yourself dragging at work. You're going to find yourself having conflicts, maybe potentially in your friendships or with your family of origin. You are going to know that you are carrying deep, dark, negative energy in your life, and it is going to make you feel very heavy. And that's a tremendous burden. Your relationship, you want to be the thing that buoys you and makes you show up as a better person in other domains of your life because you're supported. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to be perfect, but it has to be life-giving enough that it's making who you are in other spaces of your life better. If it's making you show up in other spaces in your life as darker and more negative, that's a difficult sign to reckon with.
That's a really good compass to look at because looking at every relationship I've had, it's so true. No matter how much I love someone, if it's not the right relationship, it is affecting the rest of my life. It's affecting my energy, my well being, my friendships. And then the right relationship makes everything else better. Even if we have a day where we're fighting, it still is like somehow making me better in my career or better with my friendship. So, like, that's such a genius barometer that I've never thought about, but, like, relationships do impact your life so much, so seeing which way they're impacting can tell you everything.
Yes. And there's something that I wanted women in their 20s, 30s, beyond to know is that the science is very, very clear The number one strongest predictor of well being is your relationship satisfaction. Number one, not your job, not your friends, not your physical fitness. The number one indicator of how happy you are in your life satisfaction, is your relationship satisfaction. So when you are choosing a mate, you have to choose it like your life depends on it, because it does. It
Mm.
really does. And this is not the time or the place where you choose from slim pickings just because it's what's currently available to you. Because that choice right now for comfort now, so that you're not alone now, so that you can quiet that anxious voice in you that is worried about being alone, worried about getting older, and you know, that short-term choice to quiet that discomfort now is going to result in much, much more discomfort later in your life when you have more responsibilities, more people leaning on you, and when it's going to be harder to leave. So I'm so excited for young women to get the message early that the choices that you make now are so important for later down the line. And if you're going to choose like a lifelong partner, please choose a partner thinking about a long life. Because the things that matter to you today are not going to be the exact things that matter to you when you're 50, 60, 70. It's a big responsibility. You have to act on behalf of your future self and choose the person for a long life. If you want to have a lifelong relationship, be thinking about a long life. Be thinking about, what am I going to want when I'm this age, in this age, in this age? Because I don't know about you, but for me, what I want now in my life and what's important to me is vastly different than when I was 22. Vastly different.
What do you wish more women would look for when they are choosing that long-term partner with their future self in mind?
That is the easiest answer for me, because I want women to pick a partner that is going to be there for them when times are hard, because life is hard. Life gets complicated. I always had it in my head that the older I got, the easier life would get, because the more agency I would have, the more wisdom I would have. Wrong. It is not true. Life does not get easier. Life gets more and more complicated. Okay. Many people choose to have kids. Many people take on the responsibility of caring for aging parents. Life gets more complicated. And you want to be with someone who is going to have your back when shit goes down. I recently had a major, major medical crisis, and my husband held my hand in the ICU all night long, and he never let go. And we had a major recovery process that we had to go through together. And it's like, man, if I had picked one of these fuck boys that I was dating when I was in my 20s, no,
They would not be holding your hand in the ICU.
they would not be holding my hand in the ICU. So pick the person that's going to hold your hand in the ICU. And God, I hope that doesn't happen to you, but metaphorically, it will. You will go through hard things in your life. And don't marry somebody until you've gone through something hard with them and you see how they react.
That is a really good tip that I think a lot of people don't really think about, making sure you see each other through a hardship, because it tells you so much about how they're going to act in the future.
Absolutely. How people act when things are the hardest tells you a lot about them. And I'm not saying that they have to act perfectly or they can't get upset or they can't get anxious. Those things aren't true of me. I certainly act that way, but I'm going to stand by my person when things get hard. I'm going to have his back. I'm going to support him. I might be upset. I might be angry. I might be any of these things, but I know where I'm going to be standing. And that's
Mm.
the kind of partner that I want to have, and that I really encourage young women. Make sure that you're picking someone who's going to have your back.
So you wanna make sure, like, let's say you're in a new relationship or younger relationship, hopefully, most young couples before they get married don't go through, like, a really awful time. So what are some green flags and red flags to look for? Is it, just making sure that they show up if you're having a hard time at work, making sure that they're checking in on you, or like what would some green flags and red flags be?
Every relationship is going to have opportunity to see how a person operates under stress. Every single relationship. And you can take smaller things that happen and project, okay, well, if they acted this way when this small thing happened, how's it going to be when it's a bigger thing? So I do think that there are lots of opportunities. Somebody has a friend that acts disrespectful to you when you're all out in a group setting. Does your person have the integrity to say, hey, it's actually not okay to talk to Molly that way? Or are they going to brush it under the rug and be like, don't pay attention to him. He's such a jerk. No, I want someone that who is going to have the integrity and the assertiveness and the character to have my back. And that's very different from someone who is like getting in conflicts all the time. That's not what I'm talking about. I just mean somebody who has the character and the integrity to support you, even in small situations. That's going to give you a little window into things and show you how things will be when they get even harder.
And I think even the example you gave, I know it was about a different situation, but even going to someone and saying, this bothers me that you don't say I love you, the way they're even responding to you when you're upset about something, even if they don't understand, even if they're like, I really don't understand why this is a problem for you, but can you explain it? I'm so sorry that you're feeling hurt. Like, that's another way that, like, they're obviously showing that they have the capacity to care so much about your feelings that that's probably like, "Oh, in the future, you're gonna be able to be there for me," versus the version of the guy that's like, "Why do you care so much about 3 little words? Why does it matter to you so much?" That's gonna be the person that's not gonna be there for you in the ICU.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
How people treat their close friends and their family members, I do think says a lot about how they will probably treat you long term. Now, I want to have a little bit of a caveat around this because family of origin relationships can be very, very complicated. And some people who have difficult families have to have important boundaries. So I'm not saying like they have to be super close with their family or it's a red flag. Truly not saying that. But I'm saying, how do they treat people? Even if there are difficult relationships in their family, do they have appropriate boundaries? Are they able to be respectful when they engage, even if it's a difficult relationship? Do they have long term friends? Or is it just sort of the friend of the year, the friend of the season, the group they happen to be hanging out with now? I'm not saying everyone has to be friends with their childhood friends, but if there's a rotating door and people a revolving door and people are coming in and out and no one really stays, I'm curious about that. I want to know why. And I want to know how they're showing up for their friends when their friends have difficulty. In the dating process, people talk about a lot. Well, I really value this. I really value this. I don't really put much weight into what people say they value. I put weight
Mm.
into how people spend their energy and their time and their money.
Their
That's what,
actions rather than their words, yeah.
yeah. Someone can tell me that they love to travel or they love to play the piano. But if they haven't practiced piano, they don't have a piano, they don't seek out a piano, they haven't played piano in 5 years, that's more a sort of a wish rather than a value. You know, it's sort of something more that they idealize rather than they value. Because if you value something, you find a way to make it a part of your life. And so I
Mm.
just ask women to take a look at, irrespective of what he's saying he values, where does he spend his time, his money, and his energy? That's what he actually values.
This is such a stupid example of that, but we always laugh. I don't know if you watch any, like, reality TV shows, but, like, me and
So
my
much.
fiance will okay, oh, good, then I found the right audience. Well, we, like, laugh because you know how, like, on every show, like, whether it's The Bachelor or Love Island or whatever, they're like, "Yeah, family is really important to me." Like, every single person will say, "Family is the most important thing to me," and we always laugh because 'cause we're like, okay, like, that doesn't mean anything. I would wanna know, like, okay, how does family mean a lot for you? What are you doing? How close are you? What does your family dynamics look like? Saying family is really important to me. Every single reality TV star has said that on a dating show. It's like knowing how, what does that actually mean? that
Right.
matter. So, like, getting to know the actions instead of the words makes such a difference because I've also had so many friends that have been like, "Oh, he says he's so into this," or "She really likes this," and then it ends up not being actually true because it was just their
Yep.
words and not their actions.
Right. I'm
Mm.
not saying that people are intentionally trying to be dishonest. I just think there's a lot of people out there that don't really know themselves very well. And that they hear it out there that you're supposed to value family, you're supposed to value friendship. And so that's what they say they do, but they haven't really done the inner work and taken a look at themselves to see where am I putting my time, my money, and my energy? Because that's
Yeah.
what you value.
Yeah, because especially, like, for that example, of course, everybody loves their family, so they're gonna think in their brain, "Yeah, that's my main value, I really value family," but then they're not actually making the time, they are not actually engaging in healing dynamics or making sure they're super close or whatever it is that, like, is important to you if that were gonna be your partner, of
Right.
what actually being close to a family looks like, but they can think they value family because they love their family, of course, but it's different than having the value that actually matters to you that would make you happy if that were your partner.
Totally. No, I think
Mm.
you said this is such a stupid example, but I think it's an awesome example.
I always think of reality TV, and every single person I'm interviewing, I was like, "Oh, I have a reality TV example for
Same.
that." So I'm glad
Same.
you got it. I'm glad. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this too. There's a huge conversation, if you've seen it, about like emotional labor and that women have obviously had to take on a lot of emotional labor. And we especially see that when it comes to, like women are obviously having to be even more ambitious, but they're also the more thoughtful ones. They are the ones who are caring for their kids most often. They are thinking of the presents for their in laws. Like there's a lot of emotional labor that goes on. And I'm curious your thoughts on basically how women can get through that and choose a partner that doesn't put emotional labor on them. What are some of those things to look for? Because I would like for all women everywhere to stop taking on the majority of the emotional labor.
Oh my God. This one hits so hard because this is literally my life. This is my
Tell
life.
me about it. Tell me
I
about
mean,
it.
in my household, my husband and I both work and we have 2 kids, and I definitely take on more of the emotional labor, the household management. My husband is a very involved father, but when it comes to the details, I am like the executive manager of our entire home. I am the person who got us ready for the first day of school, who remembered to schedule doctor's appointments and haircuts and buy new shoes and get a new backpack because now you're too big for your old backpack. And I got my son's room cleaned and decluttered so he could have a nice fresh start for the school year. And I'm one that signed him up for the after school program and I registered him for karate and I remember to pay the bills for soccer and he's going to need new cleats this year for, the list is endless. Okay. It is endless. And here's the thing. I am way more detail oriented and perfectionistic than my husband. And so for me, there's two parts that have to happen. One is I do have to accept to some degree that I do the most, that I am extra in everything, and that if it were up to him to do, it wouldn't be a big deal. Maybe our kid's backpack is a little small for him this year. And if that's the case, we'll just run to Target and grab a new one. Like he is much more like fly by the seat of his pants. Like not everything has to be planned in advance. Like it's going to be okay. So I realize that I do the most. And I cannot hold him accountable for meeting a standard that he does not actually share as a personal value. That's part of it.
Hmm.
I have to own my part of it. I am a perfectionist. I have a higher standard. And if I am going to try to meet that standard, I cannot be resentful of him that he's not going to help me meet the standard when it's not a standard for him. And we're not talking about like basic things like getting our kids education and fed and, we're good on all those things. It's all this extra stuff. So part of it is this that I have to be realistic about our different personalities and our different standards and not hold him accountable for things that are my choice. I'm the one choosing to do these things, right? However, There is also a way that I need to let go of control. Part of the reason why this dynamic persists in our home is because I am a control freak. And when he offers to do things, he's like, I'll take care of that. I notice that there's a script in my head, an automatic script in my head that thinks to myself, I can do it better. It's probably not true. It's just that if I do it myself, I can control it. And then I don't have to worry about, is it going to get done, or is it going to get done well enough, or like all these things that for me, I know they are really tied to my perfectionism. And so I want people to take a look at what are the systems that are causing this dynamic to persist? Because we've challenged it in my relationship, or I've told my husband, I'm taking on too much. I feel like things are unbalanced. And he's like, I want to help, but you won't let me do anything. So you have to look at what are the systems that are underlying this. For me, since I can only control me, I know that one of the systems that underlies it for me is a need for control and my perfectionism. That's my responsibility to take care of. What's his responsibility to take care of is his conditioning that in the house he grew up in, his mom did everything for the family. And that's what he was taught. And so he doesn't automatically think about, okay, back to school, what's needed? Because he was always shown that somebody else would do that for him. And so his work is to not say, what can I do to help? Which, by the way, still puts the responsibility on me to figure it all out. His job is to look around and say, what needs to be done? And
Yes.
this is how I advise couples. To the man, stop saying, what can I do to help? I know you're coming from a good place, but it's a continuation of a system that requires that the woman still hold the emotional labor of making the list in her head, deciding what needs to be done, and then delegating it. That's a lot of work. So stop saying, how can I help? And instead, take a look around and think to yourself, what needs to be done? Then you can go to your partner and say, my son's name is Romeo. Romeo's starting school next week. I was thinking he's going to need this, 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 and this. Which one of these do you want me to take care of? And then I can say, I've already got the backpack, but I would love if you would get all the soccer stuff. I haven't got shin guards. I didn't go pick up the uniform. I don't have new cleats, and he's definitely not. That's what guys need to do. Stop asking, how can I help? And take a look around and ask yourself, what needs to be done? Then go
Oh,
to your partner and say, this needs to be done. Which of these things would you prefer I take on?
people would be having a lot more sex if their partners came to them and said, I've already taken care of these things. Like, that is maybe the hottest thing I could ever hear is,
Yes,
I've already
the
taken care of
emotional
this.
bandwidth that opens up for you to then feel sexy is it's
Oh
something.
my god. Women are seen as the project manager, and men, not to stereotype, but a lot of times see themselves as the employee instead
Yes,
of the co-project manager. So stepping into the role of co-project managing your home instead of looking at your wife, spouse, girlfriend as the boss, the project manager, that shift is so important. And I think it's something that I don't blame people for because it's the culture in which we live. You know, like you said about your husband, like that's what he grew up seeing. I think we also pat men on the back because they're babysitting their children. We
oh, hell
are
no.
so like, "Oh my god, you showed up for the parent teacher conference. You're such a good dad." We
No.
put men on a pedestal for showing up, and we put so much pressure on women to be perfect mothers. So, like, of course, you are more of a perfectionist than your husband is because the society has put so much pressure on you to be the perfect mother. Like, that's how we feel. So
Yes,
it is
and
like
it's
a
how we're
huge
evaluated
system.
too.
It's how we're evaluated, and I think it just takes that intentionality, like you said, to begin to shift it.
100%. And again, I have to come back and look at myself. What am I doing to propagate this dynamic, I am a perfectionist and I'm a control freak. So I have to look around and say, in what ways am I bringing that energy to this and helping to create this dynamic that is actually not good for me? Where
Hmm.
can I let go?
For women who find themselves in this dynamic, is it a matter of, okay, I'm going to start by just like, it doesn't have to be done perfectly. Even if you're still delegating, like, is delegation the first step, even though it's still kind of like the project managing, but like, at least you're allowing some weight off of your shoulders?
You know what? If we're going to level up, maybe that's a beginning step. It's not going to solve your problem.
Yeah.
Delegating is not going to solve your problem. It's not going to make you feel like you have a teammate. It's not going to make you feel like there's a mutuality. It's going to make you feel like you have another kid.
And I think a lot of women obviously feel that way. You know, they'll talk about their additional child. So is
Yeah.
that something you think that there's certain things to look for when you're choosing a partner to know that you can avoid that? Or is that something you change in the dynamic together?
I think you cannot, in our culture, get away from this dynamic. It's the water that we're swimming in. I literally don't know anybody that grew up outside of these unspoken rules. So I think you can expect that whoever you're with, if you're in a hetero relationship, there's going to be this dynamic. And I also think it's most men, it's not that they don't want to be helpful, it's that they literally don't have the structure around them that models this for them and shows it. So the
Right.
earlier you can start this in with the relationship, the better. You know, start this before you have kids.
And what does that look like to start it? What would that be in practice?
Women don't always be the one to be planning everything. You know, if you're living together, don't always be the one that's looking down 2 months down the road of what's going to need to happen with the home and the cars, and just sit down together and say, okay, what needs to happen here and who's taking on what. There is an amazing book and associated card game called Fair Play. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Oh my God. You everybody has to know about this. The book is written by Eve Rodsky. I like worship her. And she's made this like extensive card deck of every possible task that has to get completed to run a household. Each card has a household responsibility on it. So you go through the cards and you decide which ones are applicable to us, and you have the deck of cards. You go through and you first sort them into right now, today, who does what. And you look at how the cards are stacked. And that is shocking. Shocking. Okay. And then you look at how the cards are stacked and you say, look, here's how the cards are stacked. And now we're going to restack these. And you sit down and you like have a date with your partner and you go through, okay, for the next month, whose responsibility is this? And you switch and you trade cards. And then you each have your card deck and you know what you're responsible for. So nobody has to delegate anymore. Nobody has to do reminders or check ins. You're just responsible for what's in your hand. It's called Fair Play, and it's an awesome system.
That is so
Mhm.
genius, and it's so smart at disrupting patterns, because I think that's the hardest part of a relationship that's been existing for so long. It's so hard to disrupt the cycle, the dynamic, if you wanna change it.
It is, it is. And I think if you can make it lighthearted, if you can do it on a date night, and like have a mocktail or a glass of wine or something, you can make it kind of fun. You know what I mean? It
Yes,
doesn't have
yes.
to feel so heavy.
That's such a good idea. If someone is currently in a relationship, how can they assess whether or not they're truly compatible for the long haul?
Every day is an opportunity. We are all sort of inclined to be looking for the big signs, the big moments. And we can really learn so much just by examining the day to day. Because when it comes down to it, a relationship is about how you feel on a daily basis. It's about the very quiet, boring, mundane moments. That's what a life is together. A life together is not about planning a wedding or having big trips. Like, those are fun moments that punctuate life and are very memorable. But the actual quality of our life is determined by our daily experience, not by the big moments. So if you're looking for, what's the sign that this is the relationship? Don't have it be based on what your trip was like or what they did for you on your birthday. Those things can inform you. But how do you feel on a daily basis? Waking up, going to bed, having the good night phone call, because that is what is going to make up the majority of your life.
Hearing you say that, I, like, think of so many couples that I know who you do kind of get hooked on, like, "Oh, well, this was so romantic. This trip was so romantic. This proposal was so romantic, planning the wedding." And then it kind of becomes, "Okay, now what?" Because it's boring just to be in the day-to-day together. So,
Yeah,
like, what's next? We gotta do something else.
right.
And it's so sad. You wanna be so happy to just, like, sit and be bored together and, like, enjoy just, like, waking up, and that feels good enough.
Yeah. And for many, many couples, and most couples have kids.
Mm,
That's just the stats. And when you have kids, it really stops being about these big romantic moments and starts being more about how do we manage life together with a lot of responsibilities and taking care to keep other human beings alive and give them a good
yeah.
experience in this world. And it's like, you don't see that in movies. You don't see it on Bridgerton. You're seeing in media and on social media, you're seeing people fall in love, but you are not seeing what happens afterward. And most of your life is the afterward. Most of your
Mm.
life is the afterward. It's not the buildup. It's not what you see in the movies. So don't make the decision based on the big dopamine hits. Make the decision based on that just quiet safety feeling that you have every day of your life, knowing that you're with the person that you want to do this life with.
That is amazing advice. What's something that you wish every woman listening knew about love and partnership that you don't think we're taught enough?
Hmm. That you have to ask for what you want. People, including myself, want others to read our minds because
Amen.
it is very, very hard to ask for what you want because we are not trained to do that. We are trained to keep our mouths shut and look pretty and hope that good things come our way as a result. And we think that the right man is just going to know us and know what we want and give it to us without us asking for it. And it's very uncomfortable to ask for what we want. It is a myth that the person that loves you will just know that you what you want and give it to you. It's not true, guys. It's not true. We have to teach people what we want. And you teach them that by asking. And if you never ask for what you want and you never get it, you will never know what you could have had if you had just said, you know what? I know it's not important to you and it's hard for you, but hearing I love you is really important to me. And it's something I really want us to work on and get to the bottom of. You have to ask for what you want. Otherwise, you lack agency in your life. And then your life just becomes about what happens to you. And that's so sad.
Yeah.
Just
So
ask for
sad.
what you want because you deserve it. And if you ask for it and you're not going to get it, then at least you can make an informed decision about how you're going to move forward. Are you going to say, you know what? I can live without this. I get this, this, and this is the right partnership for me, and I can live without this. Or you can say, I actually can't live without this. This is really important to me. Let me ask again. Let me see if there's a different way. And then if you really can't get it, then you're going to have a hard decision to make. And I think sometimes people don't ask for what they want because it lets them stay in the illusion that maybe they'll get it someday.
That's so true. But it really helps knowing how they're going to respond to other things down the road. If you say it would really mean a lot for me if for you to plan more dates and they don't take you seriously, they don't care that that would make you happy. That's really freaking good intel that you should know.
Yeah, because that's not a whole lot to ask for.
Exactly, and I think so many people find themselves in that situation. I feel like it's so powerful the way you're explaining a relationship to think of it like there's obviously no perfect person, but you can build your happiest relationship together. You can, like, co-create it by vocalizing, "Oh, can you do more of this? I want more of this. This makes me happy. What makes you happy?" Like, to communicate what you want is how you co-create the happiest relationship you could imagine.
Yeah. And, I hear from women a lot, "Oh, I'm tired of having to always ask for what I want." And I'm
Right.
like, okay, I get that. But don't you think you'd be more tired of it if you didn't ask for what you want and still didn't get it? That's pretty tiring too, to just live a dissatisfied life, hoping that someone will figure out what you want and give it to you. That's pretty tiring too, you
It's
know?
so
At
true.
least when you ask for what you want, you've got agency.
And I understand the fatigue if you've asked for what you want and you're not getting it, but then
Yes,
that's intel
that
that
is
you need to
that
know and
is
make the decision.
important data.
Dr. Molly, we're going to wrap up with some rapid fire question.
Okay.
First one, a green flag that most people overlook.
Hmm. I'm gonna go back to long-term friendships. I love a man that has long-term friendships.
Your favorite depiction of relationships in pop culture could be like a movie, TV show, celeb, especially knowing you like reality TV.
Yeah,
What's a relationship you love to watch in pop culture?
this is gonna tell so much about me, and I know it's so old-fashioned, but my
I'm so
absolute
excited.
favorite Disney character is Sleeping Beauty. I named my daughter
Oh.
after her. My daughter's name is Aurora.
Aurora. Oh my
Yeah.
god, that's so beautiful. Aurora and Romeo, are you kidding? That is the cutest thing I've ever heard.
And I love that relationship because he finds her through her voice. She's singing, and their relationship is kind of built on music. And there is this feeling of them deeply knowing each other. And he has to slay a dragon for her. So it's very traditional, but also I think Prince Philip is the hottest of all the Disney princes.
Oh,
So
without a doubt, I agree. He and Prince Eric are tied for me, they're
they're
up
right up
there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is beautiful, though. No, that's so sweet. Fill in the blank. If everyone had this one habit, it would change their life.
I know this is so cliche, but exercise. If everyone
Mm,
exercised, it is the single most life-changing habit is to exercise. It's also the thing that is like the hardest for me. I'm not like a natural athlete. I'm not highly motivated to exercise, but when I'm doing it, I am literally a better person. I'm a better mother, I'm a better partner, I'm a better me, everything.
do you notice, especially, like, in mental health with psychology, exercise plays such a factor?
Oh my God. And it's not even just that I notice it, all the data show it. Like, if you have a mental health disorder, the most effective treatment is a combination of talk therapy, exercise, and if it's depression, an antidepressant. That is how you will
Wow.
get the most bang for your buck.
That is just a good tip right there.
Mhm.
Best piece of advice you've ever received?
From my dad, I was like 30 and I was considering going back to grad school to become a psychologist. I was like 29 or 30. And I said, Dad, I really want to do this. I think that this is what I'm meant to do, but it's going to take like 5 years. It's going to take so long. And he said, Molly, the time is going to go by whether you have a PhD at the end of it or not. It changed everything for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, 5 years is going to go by, and I'll either be a clinical psychologist at the end of that 5 years or I won't be. So why not spend my 5 years doing the thing that I want to do? Because the time is going to go by no matter what.
Wow. Wow. That can apply to anything. Like, this one thing is gonna take so much time, the time's gonna pass anyway.
And who are you going to be once the time is up? You going to be the person that you want to become, or are you going to be the same person you are right now,
That
but
is
5 years older?
powerful shit. Wow. Last question, what is a book that changed your life?
There's so many because I love books so much. There's a book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran that I had someone do a reading from my wedding, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in there about life, about death, about love. It's called The Prophet.
Okay, I'm adding that to my reading list
Oh my
now.
god,
I
I've got
don't
it
think I've heard of
sitting
it.
right here.
I'm literally gonna check that out from the library this week
It's
then.
very short too, and it's written sort of in poem form. It's really, really good.
Wow. Dr. Molly, thank you so much. I know there's so many women listening that are like, "Thank God I heard this today. I needed this." Where can everybody find you?
Everyone can find me on Instagram at Dr. Molly Burritz. And if you follow me there, then you will find out about the launch of my new podcast, which is going to be launching really soon. So everyone follow me there to stay tuned.
Oh my God, that is so exciting. You are meant for a podcast. I mean, I could have talked to you forever. You need to constantly be releasing wisdom.
Well, I hope that you will come and be a guest.
Say the word. Oh, I love to talk relationships. I love to talk shit about my fiance. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, Molly. This was so much fun.
I had a great time. I'm so glad to have been here.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. I know I sure did. Please do not forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really makes a huge difference for our show so we can keep growing and bringing the content that you love. If you want more info, you can find us at the Everygirl Podcast on Instagram or theeverygirlpodcast.com. Talk to you next week.